Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is the NFL edition of Ron's Rundown, where we're going to go over all 14 games in the NFL for Week 6, the Thursday Night Football game, the Sunday games, and of course the Monday Night Football contest as well. If you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Helps us out a ton, and don't forget to put your football picks in the comment section below. If you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at the Premium Picks tab at pickdawgz.com. I've got premium plays in the NFL, college football, baseball, NHL, the NBA is coming up, so perfect time to check out those long-term plans if you're interested at Pick Dawgz Premium. Alrighty, here we go. Here are the games for Week 6 of the NFL season. First up, we see the Washington Commanders taking on the Chicago Bears. This is your Thursday Night Football contest on Prime Video. We're going to see the Bears as a small favorite, and the total set at 37.5, the lowest total on the board for Week 6, and really one of the lower totals we'll see all season long. And there's no surprise. When you look at both of these teams offensively, they just haven't done much this season. The Commanders 18 points per game, the Bears 17 points per game. I mean, the Commanders and Bears offensive lines have also really struggled this season. The Commanders only averaging 89 rushing yards per game. They're taking a lot of sacks as well. And, Carson Wentz, although he's top 5 in passing yards and passing touchdowns for quarterbacks this season, he has made a lot of big mistakes, including a really crucial mistake at the end of that game last week against the Titans, where the Commanders had the ball at the 2-yard line, first and goal, with about 20 seconds left in that game, down by 4. They could have won the game with a touchdown, and Carson Wentz couldn't find the end zone in the first 2 plays and then throws an interception on 3rd and goal. And, it was just tough to watch for this offense continuing to struggle. The Chicago Bears, not really much different. Although they covered the spread and put up 22 points against the Vikings last week, they only had 270 total yards of offense. Their offensive line has struggled. Their run game has been inconsistent. So you look at the Commanders defensively, they have improved quite a bit from the beginning of the year. The last 2 weeks, we've seen them hold their opponents to under 300 total yards. They're getting some pressure on the opposing quarterbacks. Their run defense has improved. So I think we're going to see a low-scoring, ugly game similar to what we saw last Thursday night. We see plenty of primetime unders this season, especially in these Thursday night games. And last week with the Colts and Broncos, I know a lot of people were not happy having wasted their time watching that kind of game. It was sloppy offense from start to finish, but I was in my head, I'm saying, man, these guys don't know what's coming up next in Week 6 on Thursday night. So I think we're going to see another under here. Give me the under 37.5. Next up, we see the Baltimore Ravens taking on the New York Football Giants. The Ravens are favorites here on the road, and the total is set at 45 points. Now, the New York Giants have been one of the more exciting underdog stories this season, 4-1 to start the year. They've taken down some tough teams. They beat Tennessee on the road to start the season, and just last week, they take down Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers in London, 27-22, a big-time upset. The Giants were, I believe, 9 or 8-point underdogs in that game, so they obviously covered the spread pretty easily in that one in the end. But when you look at this Baltimore Ravens team, this is a team that knows how to run the football, whether it be by their running backs or Lamar Jackson himself, as this team's already averaging 5.4 yards per carry and 145 total rushing yards as a team per game. We saw similar numbers last year, 146 total yards per game on the ground and 4.8 yards per carry from Baltimore. So this is a team that's been able to run the football pretty well for the last few seasons, and that's where I worry about the Giants defensively, as in the last few weeks they've really struggled against the run. Now, last week they only gave up 94 total rushing yards, which seems like a big-time win for the Giants defense. However, it was because Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, for some reason, didn't really run the football too much. They still had 4.7 yards per carry in that game. Aaron Jones was really strong on the ground. A.J. Dillon, he only had a few carries, but he was good in his few carries. He was pretty efficient with those carries. So, the Giants defense against the run has now given up at least 4.5 yards per carry, and really at least 4.7 yards per carry in the last 4 weeks of the season to the Bears, the Packers, the Cowboys, and the Panthers. And now you bring in a run game that I think is better than all 4 of those teams. I really worry about this Giants defense when it comes to stopping the run. Overall, the Giants offense has been situational offense. Daniel Jones isn't lighting up the stat sheet with passing touchdowns all over the place and passing yards, but he hasn't really made too many mistakes this season. The Giants have taken care of the football. They've been able to force some turnovers as well. But in this spot against the Ravens team that I think is going to be able to control the tempo on both sides of the ball, I just can't get there with the New York Giants. As much as I'd love to take them, as much as they've been a fun team to back, I got to take the Baltimore Ravens here and lay the points. In our next game, we see the San Francisco 49ers taking on the 5-0 against the spread Atlanta Falcons. That's right, the only undefeated team against the number this season has been the Atlanta Falcons, despite being 2-3 overall this year. They've covered the number in all 5 games, but I don't love their chances in covering this spread against the Niners this week, as when you look at the Atlanta Falcons, they really relied on their ground game this season, averaging 5.1 yards per carry and 165 rushing yards. That's been Mariota and the pretty strong Atlanta Falcon ground game in terms of their running back play. And you got to give them credit. They've been able to move the ball. They've been able to score some points. But against this 49ers defense, I just don't think that's going to be the case, even at home, even in Atlanta, as San Francisco has been one of the best defenses, if not the best defenses in the league in terms of stopping the run this season. They've given up only 71 rushing yards per game and 3.0 yards per carry on the ground, only giving up 249 total yards per game to opposing offenses, and they've earned sacks on 12.3% of their opponent's passing plays. The Falcons still have some issues at their offensive line. We saw last week Mariota was sacked 5 times by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers pass rush, and I think the 49ers have a better pass rush than Tampa Bay, and they've earned 13 sacks San Francisco has in the last 2 weeks alone combined against the Rams and Panthers. This 49ers defense is the real deal, and the offense is good enough in my opinion. The offensive line has held up even though they've had some injuries. Jimmy G has been good enough for the 49ers to keep putting up some points. Last week, 37 points over the Panthers. Give me the San Francisco 49ers laying the points here on the road. Next up, we see the New England Patriots taking on the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are 2.5-point favorites, and the total set at 42.5. Now, I think the Cleveland Browns had some issues defensively. They've not been able to stop the run the last 2 weeks, giving up over 200 yards per game on the ground to the Chargers and the Falcons. And we got to remember, this is a Chargers ground game that has not been able to do anything before that game against the Browns. I mean, the Chargers were averaging under 3 yards per carry, under 100 rushing yards per game. They were not running the football well at all. And now they go into Cleveland and they put up 238 rushing yards and 7 yards per carry on that Cleveland defense. I worry about the Browns defense against the run, especially in a matchup like this, facing Ramondre Stevenson, who had a breakout performance last week, 161 rushing yards himself, 25 carries, and the Patriots have been able to run the football pretty efficiently the last 3 weeks, over 5 yards per carry. So I think the Patriots move the ball pretty well and consistently in this game, even without Mac Jones at quarterback. On the other side, however, the Browns have been able to move the football themselves. Jacoby Brissett's been solid at quarterback, and they're running the football really well, over 5 yards per carry as a team this season. The Patriots, although they were good against the run last week, before that they were struggling against the Packers and the Ravens, giving up 5.7 and 7.2 yards per attempt overall this season, giving up a good amount, about 5 yards per carry to opposing ground games. So even though both of these teams are known for their defenses, and the Patriots shut out the Lions last week, I think both teams moved the ball pretty consistently in this game. And I think even though the quarterback play may not be the strongest in this one, I think this total set just a little bit too low. I think both teams run the ball pretty well. I think Nick Chubb and Ramondre Stevenson are must-haves in your daily fantasy lineup. So give me the over in this Browns-Patriots game. Next up, we see the New York Jets taking on the Green Bay Packers. The Packers are 7-point favorites, total set at 46 points. I'm going to go with a 2-leg, same game, 6-point teaser. So I'm going to take the Green Bay Packers, move them from -7 to -1, lay 1 point here, and then the total, I'm going to take the 46. I'm going to move it down to 40 and take the over 40. So Green Bay -1 and the over 40. The reason why I like that, although I'd like the Packers to win this game, I don't necessarily love them at -7, but I do think they will win this game in the end. When you look at the New York Jets, yes, their defense has been good the last 2 weeks, holding teams to under 300 total yards, but who did they play against? The Pittsburgh Steelers, who just scored 3 points against the Bills, and their offense has kind of been all over the place with Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett struggling this season. And then you look at the Miami Dolphins, yes, they have some weapons offensively, and they've had a good start to the year, but no Tua and no Teddy Bridgewater, as he was injured at the beginning of that game. It was mostly Skylar Thompson in that one. So yeah, the Jets did a good job defensively, but they're facing a much tougher offense and a much better quarterback here in Aaron Rodgers. So I don't love the Jets defensively, but I do think the Jets can score some points here, even though the Packers defense was strong to start the year. And we saw in the second half against the Giants, they struggled quite a bit and really couldn't get off the field defensively. So I think the Jets can score some points early on in this one. I think the Packers pull away in the end, and I like the Packers to win this game and for this total to go over 40 points. So give me the Packers and the over in that 6-point teaser. Next up, we see the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Colts are small favorites here, and the total set at 42 points. For me, the home team has absolutely dominated this series. 9 straight up wins for the home team in the Jaguars-Colts series. These are two teams that play each other 2 times a season in the AFC South, and we already saw the first matchup. Jacksonville took down the Colts 24-0 in Jacksonville. I know a lot of people will say, wow, you're going to give me 2 points with the team that beat the same team earlier in the season, 24-0. I got to take those points, but the home team has just been too good in this series for me to pass up getting Indianapolis at a pretty good price on the money line. I do think both of these teams have some issues. Both of these teams have some things to be hopeful about. The Colts defense was real strong last week against the Broncos in that 12-9 victory. And although the Broncos offense hasn't been doing very well this season, still a pretty impressive thing to hold any team below 10 points in an NFL game. And we saw the Colts defense step up in that game at home against the Chiefs earlier in the season. The Colts are the only team to beat Kansas City this year, and that's not an easy thing to do. So, I like the Colts in this game on the money line. I'm going to continue to take the home team in this series until the home team loses one outright. So give me the Indianapolis Colts on the money line. Next up, we see the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Miami Dolphins. The Vikings are small favorites here on the road, a field goal favorite at -3. And I like the Vikings here laying those 3 points on the road. I think the big thing for me is if the Dolphins' issues were only at the quarterback position, I wouldn't mind taking Miami as the home dog. But the defense has really struggled this season, especially against the pass. And that's not what you want to see with Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson coming into town. As Justin Jefferson had an outstanding week last week, and Kirk Cousins over 300 passing yards. The offensive line has held up well. Although the run game hasn't been as dominant as we've seen in years past with Dalvin Cook, it's still a very good part of this offense. The defense has done a really good job at stopping the run the last few weeks, and I think the Vikings are just a better team on both sides of the ball. And I think even on the road here, I like Kirk Cousins and the Vikings to get it done. The Dolphins are going to be going with Skylar Thompson more than likely at quarterback, but it does look like Tua Tagovailoa has started to practice with the team, which is always a good sign to see. We'll see if Tua is able to suit up for this game, but like I said, my issues with the Dolphins go beyond this quarterback position. I think either Skylar Thompson or Tua Tagovailoa will lose this game to the Vikings in the end. So give me the Minnesota Vikings. If Tua plays, we'll get a better price, maybe even an underdog price, but give me the Minnesota Vikings here laying the 3 points for now. Next up, we see the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the New Orleans Saints. The Bengals are small favorites here on the road. Total set at 43 points. I'm going to lean towards the under in this game. I think both defenses step up in this one. When you look at the Bengals defensively, 18 points per game allowed this season. They did a pretty good job against the Ravens, a pretty good offense last week on Sunday Night Football on the road in that game, and held them to 19 points. And the offense still has some issues right now for Cincinnati. They haven't really been able to run the football pretty consistently this season. The offensive line giving up a good amount of sacks this year, and the Saints pass rush has been pretty good on the other side. 3 sacks at least in the last 3 weeks, and the defense overall for New Orleans has kept them in ball game for the most part this season, although it did struggle a little bit last week against the Seahawks. It still was good enough to grab the win in the end. I think we're going to see a low-scoring game. I don't love the outlook for both of these offenses right now, so give me the under in this Bengals-Saints game. Next up, we see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Bucs are 9-point favorites, and the total set at 44 points. I think this is a case of just too many points in this one. I like the Bucs to win the game. I don't love them to cover. I think the Steelers cover this number in the end. I could see a similar score to what we saw last week from Tampa Bay as they failed to cover in that 21-15 final over the Falcons, and the Bucs have failed to cover the number in each of their last 3 weeks now, and all 3 of those games they were actually favorites in those games. So you look at the Steelers offensively last week, only 3 points, but they still had 360 total yards, which is a lot more yards than we're used to seeing the Bills give up this season. So the Steelers had their best offensive day of the season in terms of total yards gained. Now, only 3 points was because of missed field goals, turnover on downs, some mistakes in the red zone, but the Steelers were still able to move the ball, and I think Kenny Pickett is definitely the guy that needs to be the quarterback the rest of the year for the Steelers, just in terms of, I think he has more talent, and I think he has to be the one to develop this season. Mitchell Trubisky, just not what the Steelers hoped he would be, and Kenny Pickett last week, 300 passing yards, you'll take that from your rookie quarterback. I think the Steelers move the ball enough here to put up some points and cover this number in the end, and I think the Steelers cover this one at home. So give me the Pittsburgh Steelers plus those 9 points. Next up, we see the Carolina Panthers taking on the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are 10.5-point favorites. Total set at 41 points. I think there's just too many points here. I think when you got a backup quarterback, the line is obviously going to move a little bit too aggressive, and we've seen it already this season. Guys like Cooper Rush and Bailey Zappi covering numbers pretty easily, even at backup quarterbacks, and Bailey Zappi is a third-string quarterback. So I think there's value when you look at a backup quarterback, especially a guy like P.J. Walker, who's had plenty of experience at the NFL level the last few seasons, having to have a few starts because of injured quarterbacks on his team or underperforming quarterbacks as well. So I think that P.J. Walker will do just fine in this game. I think the defense can step up, and when you look at the Rams offensively, I mean, this season they're averaging 16 points a game. Last 2 weeks, 19 points combined against the Cowboys and Niners. I know those are good offenses, but 12 sacks allowed by this offensive line. They haven't been able to run the football. There's just no way I can lay that many points in this game. Even though I do expect the Rams to win this one in the end, that's just too many points right now for how poorly this offense has looked. And I do think that P.J. Walker and the Panthers have some value on them because of that backup quarterback system. It hasn't failed me yet this season. Cooper Rush has done a great job against the number. So give me the Carolina Panthers here plus the points against the Rams. Next up, we see the Arizona Cardinals taking on the Seattle Seahawks. We're going to see the Cardinals as small favorites on the road, and this is the steepest total of the week, 51 points. So, I do think we're going to see a high-scoring game, but I just don't love taking the over here, as I think the number is right where I would put it. 51 points, a little too steep, not really much wiggle room there if you're going to be taking the over. So I'd rather just take the home dog here, who the Seattle Seahawks have really surprised me and a lot of other people this season. They're 2-3 overall. Now, yes, this defense has not been good at all, that's for sure, and they gave up 39 points last week, 400-plus yards. They've given up 400-plus yards in 3 of the last 5 weeks. So, the defense is not in good form, but the offense has done a pretty good job, and it's done a lot better than I expected. Geno Smith has been a real game manager. I mean, he's been able to complete most of his passes, one of the higher completion percentages this season. He trusts in his weapons. I know Rashad Penny's down for the season, which is a big loss for this offense, but it's time for Kenneth Walker III. I mean, this guy was one of the best running backs in college football last year. He looked strong last week, and he's had over 6 yards per carry this season. So, I don't think it's going to be too much of a drop-off in terms of production in their run game. They've ran it over 7 yards per carry the last 2 weeks. Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf still one of the more dangerous weapons in the wide receiver group in the NFC. So I think this offense does a good enough job here against the Cardinals defense. It hasn't been anything to write home about. I mean, this Cardinals secondary has struggled all season. They're not getting virtually any pressure on the quarterback, and now you have to go into Seattle, and you got to lay points with the team that has a losing record that hasn't really impressed me much at all. They've had plenty of mistakes on offense as well. I got to take the home team here in Seattle. Give me the 12th man and the Seattle Seahawks plus the points. Next up, we see the Buffalo Bills taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. We're going to see the Bills here as favorites on the road, and I actually am mistaken. I actually said the last game, the Cardinals-Seahawks, was the highest total, the steepest total of the week, but this game has a 54 over-under total, so this is going to be the highest total you'll see in Week 6, and there's no surprise. I mean, both of these offenses have been real tough to beat right now. Last week, the Bills, 552 total yards of offense, and we look at the last year's matchup in the AFC playoffs. It was probably the best game I've ever watched in the NFL. Even though I was on the losing side, I had the Bills in that game. Still a 42-36 overtime game. I thought there was no way that Patrick Mahomes was going to be able to tie that game in regulation when the Bills took the lead late. But you can't give any time to Patrick Mahomes, it seems, as he was able to tie that ball game up and win it in overtime in the end. But I think we see another fantastic ball game between, I believe, the top 2 teams in the AFC, but I got to give the edge to the Bills in this one. I'm going to take Buffalo in this revenge spot to win it and cover in the end. I think the Bills are just the better team on both sides of the ball. I think both offenses are real strong. I think Patrick Mahomes has already proven that this season, 32 points per game and a very strong week against the Raiders last week, but I think the Chiefs have some issues in their secondary. They're not getting a lot of pressure on opposing quarterbacks. I think the Bills are the perfect team to take advantage of that. Buffalo 4-1 this season. I think they're playing like a 5-0 type of team. I think they are the best team in the NFL right now. Their defense is not giving up much on the ground. They're getting pressure on the quarterback. Their offense has done basically scoring at will this season, 38 points last week against Pittsburgh. I think the Bills are the better team. Should be a fantastic game. I wouldn't blame you if you took Patrick Mahomes at home as the underdog. This is the first time he's been a home dog in his career, but I got to take Buffalo personally, so give me the Bills laying the points. In our Sunday Night Football contest on NBC, we see a big-time NFC East rivalry between the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles, the only remaining undefeated team at 5-0, but Cooper Rush, as starting quarterback for the Cowboys, is 4-0 straight up and against the spread. The Cowboys overall 4-1 to start the season. Both of these defenses, I think, are top 5 in the NFL right now. I think the Eagles could have the best defense in the whole league right now. But I give the edge to Philadelphia by quite a good margin offensively, and that's the difference for me in this game. That's why I'm taking the Eagles and laying the points. I know it seems like a lot of points here, but Cooper Rush and this offense, although Cooper Rush has done a great job at holding down the fort for when Dak Prescott can return, I still don't think he's the answer for the full season outlook for the Cowboys offense. The last 2 weeks, under 300 total yards of offense. Last week, the passing game didn't really do much at all. The offensive line still has some issues, and they haven't really been able to consistently run the football well. I know we saw another big run by Tony Pollard last week, but other than that big run, didn't do too much on the ground. I think the Eagles can stop the run here. I think they're going to be able to move the football. Even though the Cowboys defense has done a great job, I think Jalen Hurts and this offense just too much right now. So give me the Philadelphia Eagles laying the points here, what should be a fantastic Sunday Night Football game. In our final game of the Week 6 schedule in the NFL, we see the Denver Broncos taking on the Los Angeles Chargers on Monday Night Football, ESPN. It's the 4th primetime game for the Broncos this season, and man, the first 3 were not very exciting in my opinion. I know a lot of people do not want to watch the Broncos on primetime anymore the rest of the year, but here we go with number 4 of the season. But contrary to what we've seen in the first 3 primetime games for the Broncos this year, I'm actually going to go with a little contrarian play and go with the over in this one. The first 3 primetime games for Denver went well under the total, 17-16 against the Seahawks, then 11-10 against the Niners, and then 12-9 against the Colts. But in this game, the Chargers offense is one of the best offenses in the AFC. They put up over 400 total yards in 3 of the last 5 weeks. Their offense is scoring 24 points per game, but I think it's even better than that total. I think that points per game total will go up as the season continues. The offensive line is stuck in there. Their run game started to get going last week as they had over 200 rushing yards for the first time this season. Their passing game is obviously going to be strong with Justin Herbert and company. So this Chargers offense, I expect to score 28 plus points in this game. But the defense has kind of been inconsistent from LA. We saw last week they couldn't stop the run, and really overall this season giving up 5.8 yards per carry on the ground. The secondary hasn't been the strongest, giving up 67% completion to opposing quarterbacks. So yes, the Broncos offense has not been good at all this season. Russell Wilson has not been cooking much of anything this year. But I do think this is a good spot for the Broncos offense to get going a little bit and at least be competitive on the offensive side of things. So give me the over in this Broncos-Chargers game to end the week and end the night. And that's it. Those are the games for Week 6 of the NFL season. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to put your football picks in the comments section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.